Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Rena, and welcome to
Biopic, a podcast story. This is a podcast where we dissect the good, bad, ugly, and absurd of this specific genre of motion picture, the biopic. If you want to learn more about us, our scoring system, and how we choose movies, please check out our special introductory episode, Introduction, Who Are We and What Are We Doing?
Sarah, what movie are we doing this week?
This week, we will be talking about Seberg, starring Kristen Stewart as my sweet lost Jean Seberg. And Rena, can you give us the trigger warning?
This movie contains depictions of government corruption, short haircuts, misogyny, racism, airline segregation, Black Panthers, guns, infant death, crumbling marriages, well-meaning white people who are at best out of their depth and at worst indulging in white saviorism, cheekbone privilege, white privilege, adultery, toxic men, toxic film directors, negligent movie production standards, the slow death throes of old Hollywood, people being lit on fire, and French.
Yep. Rena, can you give us the spoiler warning?
Spoiler warning. We are going to spoil everything, including possibly the major plot points in works of narrative art having nothing to do with this particular movie. Consider yourself warned.
Some of the sources we used in this episode include the You Must Remember This podcast series on Jean Seberg and Jane Fonda. Also, articles from Refinery 29 and from DocuBlogger about Jean Seberg's real background and the true story and how it compares to this film.
And Sarah, can you please tell us a little bit about Jean Seberg and the movie Seberg?
Of course. Jean Seberg was an American actress. She is considered an icon of the French New Wave as a result of her performance in Jean-Luc Godard's 1960 film Breathless. She made her film debut as Joan of Arc in the previously discussed film Saint Joan, which is based on the George Bernard Shaw play. And as we discussed in that episode, she was selected from 18,000 hopefuls by Otto Preminger in a talent search to play Joan of Arc. When she was cast in that, she had absolutely no acting experience to speak of, and she really struggled as a result of that. But she did have a strong film career up into the point that we are about to watch a movie about. The movie Seberg is a political thriller from 2019, as it is described, directed by Benedict Andrews. It is based on her life, but also primarily a very difficult period of time in her life. It stars, as we mentioned, Kristen Stewart, Jack O'Connell, Margaret Qualley, Zazie Beetz, Anthony Mackie, and Vince Vaughn. Welcome back to the show, Anthony Mackie. And later in the show, we will also welcome back Stephen Root. This movie had its premiere at the Venice Film Festival in 2019. It was released in North America in December of 2019 for its awards qualifying run, and then came out in the theaters in February of 2020. It had an $8 million budget, made $1.25 million at the box office. It's really hard to say how that works and what success looks like when Amazon buys the movie and makes it for streaming. It's difficult to say what financial success looks like in a case like this, but that's the story.
I feel like this is a similar case business-wise to what we saw with Radioactive, where it's a movie that airs on Amazon Prime that has respectable people involved in it, and who knows what's going on, and it's just something there to stream within a certain category.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what success looks like anymore, and we're dealing with numbers that are entirely self-reported.
This isn't the first time that we've had someone who appeared in a previous film being portrayed by somebody else. That honor goes to Elizabeth Taylor, because we watched Cleopatra and then we watched Liz and Dick.
I would say that this is a more successful film than Liz and Dick in being a film at all. I was surprised at how much I liked this movie, because I was very concerned going into it that it was going to be one of those sad girl movies like Maria, basically like any movie Pablo Larraín makes, like where we were going to see a lot of like Jean Seberg looking out a window sadly and lamenting her life. And this had a different pace to it. It was a more active, propulsive film than one of those. So I was concerned that this was going to be sad girl movie, but it was very much not that. And we open on her playing Joan of Arc for noted monster Otto Preminger when he actually lit her on fire that one time. And I'm going to just say up front, this movie goes a little thick on the metaphors.
Yeah, I feel like this movie goes quite thick with the Christ figure metaphors for Jean Seberg. There's even a part where someone asks her about having a cross and nails to nail herself up with.
It's horrific how much her life ended up being in a lot of ways similar to the role that made her famous in terms of the way that she was tormented and spit out by men and abused and made into something that she needed to be for men to make a point about her. The metaphor is apt, albeit thick on the ground.
Well, the film that she's still the most loved for is Breathless, and I've watched Breathless a bunch of times through many years of cycles of film forum screenings. The last time we went to see it together, I actually went back and watched it a second time after, and I'm always coming to it from a new angle every time. There's Breathless, and then the rest of Godard is people blinking into the short and middle distance while eating sandwiches as a voiceover reads Karl Marx.
Yeah, he's not the most subtle filmmaker.
Anyone who reads Karl Marx to me, I have a very short rope for them to hang themselves with in terms of how much longer am I going to keep letting myself be tortured by this thing that you're doing to me.
This is a subject for another day, I'm sure, but I think this movie puts it out there. It's all over like the 1960s idealism movement and these organizations. It's still like incredibly patriarchal, and so is communism. So don't at me with your socialism because it's still patriarchal.
We need to do a bonus episode called Toxic Dude Bros of History.
I mean, that's just history.
Back to Otto Preminger. Despite everything that my brain tells me about why Otto Preminger is terrible, I keep forgiving him in my heart for breaking the blacklist and for calling Leonard and Felicia Bernstein out on their limousine liberal BS in Tom Wolfe's Radical Chic, a contemporary book that documents the night that the Bernsteins also threw a party for the Black Panthers.
This is so politically messy, all of it. We open on Paris being a political mess. She's very unhappy in her marriage to Romain Gary. She is dressed up like crazy to get on a plane to go to the United States to audition for Paint Your Wagon.
People used to dress up to fly on planes. Like, flying was seen as glamorous, and then it was deregulated. This makes me nostalgic for something that was over before I was even conceived, this era when flying was glamorous. Okay.
So we then cut to footage of the Black Panthers, which is a movement that is gaining strength in the United States. And you're going to hear me speak out of both sides of my mouth today. As a white lady in a collapsing society in the year of our Lord 2025, I have a lot of respect for a lot of the things that the Black Panthers did. However, they also humanly recognized the opportunity to take money from naive white girls and were happy to take advantage of that. And whether that's right or wrong is between them and their God. But I will say they knew what they were doing in the people that they targeted. And that is pointed out in this film.
Yes, and I appreciate that it points that out. This film deals a bit with well-meaning people screwing up.
This is like one of those cases, too, of a movie where I don't necessarily want it to be longer. The subject matter is too complicated for a 120-minute film. It was a very complicated time in America. J. Edgar Hoover, fuck that guy, had been in power for way too long and had unchecked power in terms of how he surveilled people. Whatever he wanted to do, they chased down. I referenced the book Days of Rage a lot, Brian Burroughs' book about the violent revolutionary movement in post-1960s America. And he's super hard on the Weathermen in that book as spoiled rich kid opportunists. And he's very reverent towards the Black Panthers. And I think that it's really important to recognize that the cynicism of the time cut in every direction. And every one of these organizations was media savvy and knew what they were doing and knew who they were taking advantage of and what their aim was. And I think that it's very flawed to position any of them as idealistic and pure.
I don't care for either group because the minute I hear someone cry the word revolution like it's positive, I'm like, great. You're either going to accomplish nothing or make a big mess, and I am going to run far away from you.
I understand that. So she's getting on a plane, and we cut to LA where we meet a G-man who's played by Jack O'Connell, and his wife, and it's Margaret Qualley, and she's throwing out one item in her quest to clean out their house, and that is a Captain America comic book, which is telling us that he is a misguided good guy, G-Man Jack O'Connell.
Margaret Qualley should not be throwing out that issue of Captain America, because if that is a copy of that issue sold within the past few years for $3,120,000. Seberg came out at a time when Marvel movies were peaking, but I'm going to take the presence of the Captain America comic as a cue that despite being a G-man, Margaret Qualley's husband is a decent dude, and for further clarification, I'll refer to he likes Jack Kirby, but also to the late Stephen Attewell's work on Captain America as a New Deal Democrat, which we will link to in the show notes. And I am going to refer to the cop as Margaret Qualley's husband for the remainder of the episode.
I mean, honestly, that's what he is, because Margaret Qualley, runs circles around him. This is the first time I feel like I've ever seen a movie where the cop's wife is a way more interesting character than the cop. His character's name is Jack, by the way, so that's easy enough to remember. And I was much more interested in what was going on with her than what was going on with Jack the G-Man at any given time that they were together on screen. We meet his boss, who is played by notable portrayer of assholes Cole Meany. If you have ever seen the film Con Air.
I have not seen Con Air.
He exists solely to be the guy who's telling John Cusack all of his ideas are terrible and all of his ideas are actually amazing. Next, we see noted portrayer of assholes and real life assholes. Vince Vaughn is his partner. It looks like we're going to just kind of overlay the fight of the Nazis as featured in the comic book with the fight against the Black Panthers, who were never a real threat. They weren't. It was a very small organization. With regards to J. Edgar, there's so much scuzzy shit happening at the FBI at this point.
I find Vince Vaughn's character in this very hateable. And the Black Panthers are a case of people who are actually downtrodden making use of the Second Amendment, which is apparently only meant for the privileged.
That was the smartest thing they did. It wasn't the most long-lasting and compassionate thing that they did, which is starting a free lunch and breakfast program for the school systems, which carries on to this day. Certainly, their use of the Second Amendment that forced Ronald Reagan to create gun control laws in California is So then we cut back to the plane, and Stephen Root is here playing Walt, her agent, and we're reading Paint Your Wagon, the script, and she's all, but I want to make a difference.
Welcome back to the show, Stephen Root. You are now in the Three Timers Club, and prior appearances on the show include one as J. Edgar Hoover in All the Way.
Snake's really eating its own tail here, isn't it?
The only other two members of the Three Timers Club at this point are Antonio Banderas and Tommy Lee Jones.
We love you all,
yes.
Three Timers. And Stephen Root, wherever you are, I want to marry you. Jean, just a warning here from the outside. Do not try and make a difference. You are out of your element, which is kind of the theme of this movie. Celebrities and messy politics have always gone together really well, and sometimes those people are super well informed, and other times it is just so naive and misguided, and like, don't attach yourself to that stuff.
No matter what the era, nobody cares what celebrities have to say.
Certainly not about politics. I like to know if someone's a monster, and believes terrible things, just because I like to know that about anyone I'm dealing with.
On the one hand, it's useful to know if a celebrity has awful politics. On the other hand, if they just keep their mouths shut, I could enjoy their work without hating. They should all just shut their mouths and try to work humbly and understand that your acting does not make your political opinions relevant. And I am equal opportunity on this. I wish that Ronald Reagan had followed that too, in addition to the many insufferable left-wing celebrities.
I think it was Jay McInerney, author of the film Gia, who once pointed out that a lot of celebrities didn't go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they kind of have this sort of like chip on their shoulder about proving their intellect. A lot of them do that stuff that we might have done in the privacy of our dorm rooms and college campuses before social media, and gotten it out of our system in a private place. We go on that journey with them. And also add to that the theory that you stop growing as a human, which I think Jean points out in this film too. The moment you become famous, like, you're just done aging. And, you know, if you got famous when you're 18, you're permanently that freshman in college.
That makes a lot of sense. So she is on this incredibly glamorous Pan Am flight, the most glamorously branded airline ever that we were born too late for. And I wish she would just appreciate being glamorous and leave well enough alone. But she instead meets Anthony Mackie.
Anthony Mackie is playing a real person named Hakim Jamal. He is, as Anthony Mackie always is, far better looking than the person that he is playing, because he is Anthony Mackie. He is also a return guest on the show here. He played Martin Luther King in All the Way. So we have another veteran of the cast of All the Way playing another really important person from this era. And we see that Jean is willing to give up her seat on the plane so that Betty Shabazz, the widow of Malcolm X, can sit in first class.
I don't think Betty Shabazz actually talks.
No.
Anthony Mackie shows up and makes a stink about wanting her in first class and says that they've paid for it. But there's also the idea that this is part of a thing that he does to track, like, well-meaning white celebrities.
Yeah.
To get their attention.
And Vince Vaughn and Jack are waiting at the airport for Hakim's flight. And they are not subtle as they arrive. And we see Jean get off the plane while all the Panthers are doing their fist, and she moves herself to the front of that group, and sweet summer child that she is raises her fist, and Vince Vaughn here says something so repulsive, which he's like, well, maybe she has a taste for dark meat on the bone. And I was like, please leave my movie. And why are men? Like, everything's awful. And we see Jean go to her house in California, and like, her dog's there. And I just was like, did the dog come with the house? Did the dog fly with her? We haven't seen this dog. I had a lot of questions about this dog. But it's not important.
It is possible to bring dogs on a plane. I don't think that they needed to show the details of her arranging to put the dog in its kennel in the cargo hold.
They could have shown the dog at her house with her when she was saying goodbye to her child and to Romain. All of a sudden it's there. And I was like, is that dog part of the rental agreement? Sorry. I really got, this dog trapped me. Anyway.
Well, I feel like her first kid really gets lost in the shuffle of what's about to happen with her.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I guess it was the 60s and you could just, like, fly off and leave your child for months. Cool. And Kristen Stewart, to her credit, really does look a bit like Jean Seberg.
From some angles, there are sometimes where they'll shoot her with her chin pointed down in 3/4 profile, and she does look a lot like certain shots of Seberg, but nobody looks like Jean Seberg.
No.
No.
So beautiful. Like, unreal how beautiful she was.
So we cut to the surveillance van, and 2 of the Black Panther women know that something's up with this van, and you see them doing their lipstick in their reflection on the window, which is cool.
Yeah, it's a great shot. There's a lot of, like, elegant shot composition in this film. Like, this is a very, like there's a lot of thoughtful construction of this film, and it was made in 5 weeks, which I was really blown away by. It's a really well-crafted film. It's a really nice movie to look at. And Jean is bored at her house, and she decides to get in her car and put on a dress and bring her dope haircut and drive out to Compton. I had questions about a lot of the fashion choices. I felt like they were always dressing her like her character in Breathless a lot in this movie. I felt like a lot of her outfits echoed that, and also Rich Lady. Also, I was like, do you not have jeans to drive out to visit the Black Panthers?
You do see her in shorts at one point in the film. And when you see her chilling around her house, she's usually in a bikini. I think it was just a time when people were dressier, especially people of means. And people used to take real pride in their appearance. I've spoken before about how I want to start an action group called CADS, or Citizens Against the Deformalization of Society, to make life beautiful again, because I would like to always wear Marchesa evening gowns and heels and red lipstick all the time. We should have dress-up days where people get extra uses of the tuxedos that they buy to a wedding and then wear maybe 2 or 3 times in their life.
Fair. And I appreciate this very much. I think Jean would probably be a member of your organization because she is wearing Chanel to drive out to Compton to hook up with a Black Panther. She goes there and sees Hakim, and they have this, like, college dorm room conversation about idealism and doing good in the world and how unfair things are, complete with the hooking up part of this.
Yeah, they hook up so fast.
It's Anthony Mackie. Like, real Hakim, I don't know how this happened that quickly, but and it didn't. The idea that she actually even did hook up with him is something that is in some dispute. While they're hooking up, we see the burns that she got working for Otto Preminger.
I love how he demands, who did this to, like...
Yeah.
Sometimes it's sexy when men are protective that way.
Yeah. Romain, who I'm sure did his best as a husband, he was a deeply, deeply flawed human being himself.
Like, didn't he direct her in that movie where she wants to be gangbanged?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the husband is problematic too here.
He's caveat. All of it. You know that he was probably like, it's being an artist. You have to suffer for it. And it's nice that someone actually wanted to protect her for just a quick sec. Messy politics aside, complications of the Black Panthers aside, etc. Her having sex with this man and promising to make a donation is enough for the FBI to get carte blanche to fully surveil this woman, to put phone taps in her house, to wiretap her home, and to follow her around. That was enough for the government to go hog wild on this woman. And that is so messed up.
It's not illegal to have sex or to write a check to an organization. Like, were the Panthers ever an illegal organization?
I'm sure J. Edgar said so, but no.
She is not doing anything illegal.
That is so dark. And it should concern people. And then we cut to a backyard barbecue where Jack and Vince Vaughn are there and their wives are there. And I know that this is a very different pool party energy, but it is also one that looks like hell on earth.
They're having these stilted conversations. Someone asks Margaret Qualley, "Are you really going to be a doctor?" This pool party fills me with dread.
There's a lot of good duality throughout this movie that they play, and I think that there is something really well done here about how they play how unseriously both Margaret Qualley and Jean Seberg are taken in terms of their goals and their ambitions. Then we see Jean preparing to audition for Paint Your Wagon. We're seeing her beautiful house, and she's reading with Hakim and doing the dialogue with him. And he recommends to her that she bring her gun to the audition, which she does. She goes into the audition with her hair tied up and pulls out her gun and puts it on a table. And I'm just going to say that, like, as an actor, I never considered that an option.
Paint Your Wagon is a fascinating story, it's this monster flop. It has a really weird sounding plot. It's a musical. You asked me, please tell me you are never going to make me watch Paint Your Wagon. It's not a biopic, so we won't be watching it on this show. And when I think of it, I think of the Simpsons parody where they're singing, "Gonna paint your wagon, gonna paint it good. We ain't bragging, we're gonna coat that wood." I don't know how anyone wound up making that movie.
The dialogue as she's prepping for the audition is a nightmare. I was like, I could never watch this. Please don't make me.
No.
So yeah, I never did think of bringing a weapon to an audition.
And you sort of see the dress that she's put on. It seems like it's designed to have them remember what they liked her so much in. But cut to the rec center.
I was reading about this. One of the things that Jean Seberg liked most about the Black Panthers was all of the programming that they did for children and families and education. And here's where we find out that Hakim has a wife.
He has a wife, and he has daughters with this woman.
She is played by Zazie Beetz, who is really incredible in this movie. She's a good actress, no matter what the material. And Jean writes a check for $5,000, which is $11 billion in 2025 money, both in terms of inflation and how far that dollar will take you.
To clarify, $5,000 in 1968 is roughly $46,000 in 2025.
It's still a lot of money to donate to a cause.
But this is pulling too much interest from the government men onto her.
Jack, the G-Man, is quite obsessed with her. He is watching her movies over and over and like reading her files and digging into her. He gets home late and his wife is working and she's like, I can't have sex with you tonight because I have to write a hematology paper. And I was curious, what do you think this paper is? Like, is it pro or con hematology? Like, what is this paper?
I think that the purpose of this paper is just to show that Margaret Qualley knows about hematology, but I love her so much in this for not having dinner ready for her husband.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, like
That
this is
awesome. She does not have a dinner ready for him. She did not make one, and she is not keeping it warm.
yeah.
I love her.
I love her. Jean is doing an interview where she is asked, "Who is Jean Seberg?" And she starts talking, and Stephen Root is like, cut this right now.
Quite rightly. She's doing the exact sort of thing that makes me groan when celebrities do it in 2025. Stephen Root is right on telling her to shut up. And he's much more polite than me about it. He is just like, no.
He's a good agent. He's handling the situation well. She has a fundraiser at her house for Panthers royalty, and the bug starts to fail at a certain point, and Jack, the G-Man, sitting out in his surveillance van with Vince Vaughn, makes a pretty bold move and goes right into the party and pretends to be a guest in order to fix the bug.
I think he's pretending to be a waiter, but she offers him a joint and he takes a puff off of it.
That is a bold choice in J. Edgar Hoover's FBI.
Or he can't refuse it. He has to blend in. I would have liked to have seen more of him reacting to that because I don't know how much experience he has with it.
So we find out that the FBI is going to use the affair that Jean and Hakim are having to try and neutralize Hakim, which is to say that the Panthers will not respond well if they find out Hakim is stepping out on his wife with a white rich actress. We see that the FBI uses their old fun trick of calling up the person on the phone. They call up Zazie and play some of the audio for her, and she is not happy, as one wouldn't be. She recognizes her husband's voice. She recognizes that it's probably Jean. And next we see that Jean is having a birthday party for someone's kid at her house, and Zazie confronts her.
I'm surprised that Zazie has no clue about this. It seems very clear that this is a guy who cheats. That she seems to have no knowledge of what is in his purview or what sorts of things that he does. I feel like she should be blaming him more.
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't seem to get it. And also I feel bad for Jean and Romain's kid because he completely gets lost in the shuffle. She is so caught up in what is about to happen to her that she completely loses sight of that she has a first kid who needs a mother.
Yeah. She's talking with Zazie about how hard it is to be a parent. And I'm like, I haven't seen you do much parenting, but okay. I don't doubt that it was difficult for her, and I would imagine that the fact that she is supposed to be a mother to a child in France and her career is in California, period. That's where the money is. That's where the jobs are for her. I would imagine that did not make for easy parenting, but yeah. So I was very uncomfortable during this scene. They both really did a great job, and I was very uncomfortable and wanted it to end.
Cut to another uncomfortable encounter where Margaret Qualley and her husband are having dinner with Vince Vaughn and his wife and their teenage daughter who has a haircut like Jean's. Vince complains about his kid who has tuned in, and dropped out. And I think actually Vince Vaughn sucks and his kids are right on. Normally, I would talk about how the World War II generation had a sense of responsibility and the baby boomers suck, but it seems like it's the reverse with the children of this couple that is one half composed of horrible Vince Vaughn.
Yeah. And an enabling wife who allows him to yell and scream at their child in front of company. Vince shows Jack a really ugly caricature of Hakim having intercourse with Jean. that he had someone do on Hollywood Boulevard where you can get caricatures made, and he photocopies it and then puts it up everywhere, including in front of the school that the Panthers were running in Los Angeles that Hakim was working at.
It's a very ugly caricature of them having sex where they both have pig features. This is disturbing. You shouldn't put that around children. I don't know what these people even care about.
They want to destroy people. COINTELPRO was all about destroying people, and whoever gets taken down with them is just accepted collateral damage. J. Edgar Hoover and this particular mission ruined a lot of lives, and screw that guy.
Yeah, so the Panthers are upset at Hakim, and Jean realizes that she's being bugged.
And then Zazie shows up at her house with a gun and starts shooting and telling her to stay away. And Vince Vaughn and Jack are surveilling in the van, and Jack is like, we should maybe get in there because she's going to kill her. And Vince is like, nah, let's just let this play out.
I think Vince doesn't care about anything but power, and Margaret Qualley's husband got into this for some purpose about America.
He probably thought he was going to help people.
He probably thought he'd be taking down actual bad guys like the ones that he works with or something. But I think this woman needs to realize that her husband is a guy who's going to cheat on her regardless.
Yeah.
It's possible she's mad about that and has a target for it, but Jean is only half of her problem, and Jean starts looking around, seeing problems with the phone and looking around for bugs.
She goes to New York, and Romain says he will stick with her through the premiere of Paint Your Wagon, which is kind of him because their marriage is clearly not working. The G-men are all in another hotel room talking about how they need to bug a room, and Hoover really likes to listen to people having sex. So they need
that is so just disgusting. And one of them sees her. This isn't a sad girl looking out the window longingly thing, but you do see her lean out of a window to try to get some air.
She's looking down as if she's contemplating suicide.
Just make movies. You're out of your depth.
They see her and Romain leave, so they are going to go sneak into the room to plant stuff. But then they hear them coming back because she forgot something, and the dog is barking. And Jack's partner in this operation kicks the dog so hard that he kills the dog. And that's where I'm done. Like, with the nuance, I'm like, I hate you. I hate you for this. This is so awful and so cruel. And Jean comes in and is about to change because she's upset and she's flustered and hot and wants to change her outfit. And her husband's like, do not leave wherever you are right now, because he sees the dog dead on the floor. And Jack, to his credit, is incredibly pissed off about this.
Dogs never die in movies. Hollywood is very protective of dogs. Hollywood, I think, will protect a dog over a person. It's a little dog, and also she's put tape on the doors so that she can see if it's broken, somebody's come into her room. But this is just awful, and it's a small defenseless creature.
And a man kicks a dog to death. A monster.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
She's really coming undone, and I don't blame her.
Jack, in all of his fascination with her, he's seen that she's a well-meaning person who's out of her depth. He doesn't like what they're doing to her. This is not what he signed up for.
And he gets home to Margaret Qualley, and once again, she proves that she's the only good cop wife that we've ever seen in a movie ever. Because she's like, what the heck is happening to you? And he's like, I'm sorry. And she just is like, you have to do better than that. I didn't move out here so you can try and get black kids to shoot each other. And I am just like, girl, why are you the first cop wife with a spine that we've ever seen in a movie?
Well, so we cut to after this premiere, and I realized, oh God, she saw the little body of her dead dog and then had to go to the premiere. And she and her husband are having dinner with Stephen Root and his wife, and she gets this call from, I'm a little unclear on the timeline here, and I think we might have scrambled it slightly, but she gets this call from Margaret Qualley's husband, who he's trying to save her, but he's telling her, stop doing this, stop doing that, because he can't really explain anything. It's misplaced protectiveness, I guess. But so, of course, she tells him to go fuck himself.
As she should.
She's wearing this very glamorous pink satin dress with this jeweled collar on it. She looks amazing. They do get her looking tired and like there's something wrong. And it's so sad to see the pictures of Jean Seberg from like 10 years after this.
You see the toll that this took on her in her face. It's undeniable. To Kristen Stewart's credit, who I do think is a good actress. You see her, like, the way she physically carries herself. You see her getting ground down by this. You see the effects in her. Like, it's a good performance. Once again, all of this is happening because she gave a check to and had sex with a man. That's it.
Yeah.
Margaret Qualley is saying to her husband, like, you can quit this job if it's not working for you. Then we find out that Jean is pregnant and she wants to keep the baby. She is telling Hakim, and she is explaining to him, no, it's not yours, but it sure would be cool if it was.
Yeah.
Which is really sad. The FBI is all, hey, here's an opportunity to really ruin her life. So they leak to gossip columns and to the media that she is pregnant with a Black Panther's baby, insinuating that it's Hakim's, which is not great for anybody. And they are all so pleased with themselves. They are so delighted by the opportunity to ruin this woman's life. I hate men. I hate them so much. I hate how excited they are. They are monsters.
Like, this isn't even about the Panthers anymore. It's about taking down this woman for disagreeing with them.
And the back third of this movie is watching her collapse in on herself. And it's really terrible to see. We see her collapsing because this is a woman who, part 11 billion of Hollywood, is a woman who has been taken advantage of and used by every man who has come across her and ground out. And now we're seeing it happen again. And we hear that she tries to kill herself. We also find out that she has given birth to her baby, and the baby has passed after 2 days. And I saw the language when I was researching this a lot of miscarriage, and this is not a miscarriage. This is, more or less a stillbirth.
Well, the baby did live for a couple days. Later, she says at this press conference that didn't actually happen, that she's suing Newsweek, but they don't really go into the situation with the gossip columnist or how Newsweek was involved. This G-Man that they focus on is sort of I don't like composite characters. This actually is a very quick movie for the genre. It's an hour and 40 minutes, including the credits at the end.
Yeah.
So with all of that, it's like a narrow segment of her life. But Romain Gary did write a great letter defending her, where he talked about this tiny baby, this like 3-pound baby fighting for her life. And he says, this child is mine under all the laws of France. My wife had it. I've acknowledged it. And my wife has never, her whole thing since she was 14 has been about being a humanitarian.
Several legitimate media outlets, including the LA Times, treated this gossip as real, and didn't vet their coverage very well.
Would her
their coverage very well.
Would her suicide attempt really have held the central 3 columns on the top of the paper, given everything that was happening in the world at the time for the LA Times? Yeah.
I doubt it. It's nice for dramatic effect, but certainly not likely that it would have taken that kind of column space in a newspaper in that era. I would just like to add a little horrible factoid that I found in reading about this. So at this baby's funeral, Jean Seberg opened the casket to show people that the baby was not Hakim's, which is some Sandy Hook, Alex Jones level shit. And that's insane.
Would have been such an itsy bitsy baby too.
I was like speechless when I read that. I cannot imagine the pain. We see people listening to this press conference on the radio, and we get to the most fictitious part of this film, which is the part where we see cops looking circumspect at recognizing their own complicity in ruining Jean Seberg's life, which that's hilarious that the cops would ever take responsibility for themselves. That to me, I was like, oh, this is the real fiction, is when these men look like they're slightly ashamed of their choices. Sure, Jan.
How could they not know what the effect would be when you're driving a person crazy?
When's the last time they cared? Have you ever listened to the leadership of the LAPD talk about the people that they harmed in the 80s? They're like, yeah, it's bad, but my cops had to do it. It's insane. So her life was so terribly tragic.
She never works in Hollywood again. Her life just kind of disintegrates, and it's quite sad.
In 1979, she would go missing for 10 days and be found in a car dead of probable suicide. Although there are people who will say that she was murdered by the government.
She had become such a marginal figure by then. I don't see why they'd bother to finish. They
finished the job years before that. Like, she didn't work again in Hollywood. She was blacklisted. Her marriage was ruined. She lost a baby. They're like, mission accomplished. We ruined her life. Let's put up that banner.
Yeah, and they still didn't stop anyone from sympathizing with the Panthers. Also, it seems like Hollywood didn't know what to do with her. Like, hello, Paint Your Wagon.
Didn't know what to do with her, and she was a product of a very strange time in the industry. She was talented and she had gifts, but she was instantaneously in her career thrust into the position where she was a girl alone with no one looking out for her best interests at any time. And that was a theme that continued through her life, with her marriages, with her career, with all of this mishigas, with politics, with the way that the FBI did her dirty. Like, at no point was there any lifeguard on duty who had her best interests at heart and who could help her to navigate all of these traumatic things that happened to her, and just kept building and building and building on her. The first movie she made, she was set on fire. Otto Preminger owned her for the first several years of her career. It's insane how abused this woman was.
Agreed. Also, I'm confused about how Margaret Qualley's husband is in Paris. And I'm sure he has all sorts of ways of finding out where she is, and maybe he's been carrying this file around with him. FOIA happened, so she did find out that they had a file on her. I don't understand how this scene could have happened, and I'm a little unclear on how it's happening within the conceits of this film. We both love You Must Remember This, the podcast, and thank you for introducing me to that one. I listened to the Jean and Jane season, which is about Jean Seberg and Jane Fonda in the 60s, and I had it in my head while watching this, and I feel like the thing that made the difference between Jane living to a ripe old age was it not the difference in which psychological issues they both happened to have been handed, which were different ones. I think that the reason why Jane Fonda survived the decade, despite doing arguably much more than, like, it seems like Jean Seberg just wrote some checks and pumped a fist. I think the thing that protected Jane Fonda was being the daughter of this all-American icon, whereas Jean Seberg was just the girl from Marshalltown, Iowa.
Yeah, Jane Fonda like fully sat on a tank for the North Vietnamese. What really happened with COINTELPRO is that It was shut down in 1971, and then a whistleblower shared the papers with the media and shared the files. So this was kind of like a version of that brought to life, literally. We see Jean get the papers and she's just like, okay, women are disposable once again. And it's so sad. It makes me so furious because she was a lovely actress and had so much going for her and seemed like such an interesting human being. And if she had been allowed to function in the universe, she could have done more. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And
did you have any choice dialogue?
I did not. And there's no awards talk to speak of. There are people who would argue that this was failed Oscar bait.
We see a lot of films like this where the actor does it as awards bait.
Yeah.
I can see that.
And also I think it's worth noting that there were a number of Jean Seberg projects over the years that attempted to take hold, including Jodie Foster at one point bought the rights to the biography that was written about her and was going to make a movie in 1990, but that never got off the ground. With that, do you want to score this?
Sure. Sarah, can you please give our listeners a quick refresher on how we score movies?
Absolutely. We score movies on a 1 to 10 scale across 10 areas that we find to be subjectively and or objectively important to most films, but have specially tailored to the issues specific to biopics. If you want more details on how we score movies, please scroll down our webpage at biopicapodcaststory.podbean.com. You'll also find a record of our scores for past episodes. And with that out of the way, let's score this thing.
Sarah, how did you score it?
So outward appearances, I gave it a 9. Acting and casting also gave it a 9. Passage of time, 4. Costuming, 9. Quality of the script, 6. Accuracy, 4. Storytelling, 7. Production value, 9. Production and direction decision making, I gave it an 8. And do we care? I gave it a 9. I care very much about Jean Seberg.
So what was your average?
7.4.
Nice. You were much nicer than me this week. The 60s is an era that I'm kind of done with, and we're going to get stuck seeing it again and again and again. Anyway, I think I perceived this as failed awards bait, which is reflected for outward appearances, makeup and hair. I gave it a 7.5 for acting and casting. 7.5 for passage of time. I gave it a 5. For costuming, I gave it a 7. For quality of the script, I gave it a 5. For accuracy, I gave it a 3. For storytelling, I gave it a 5. For production value, I gave it a 7. For production and direction decision making, I gave it a 6. And for do we care, I gave it a 5. So my average came to 5.8.
Interesting. I can probably attach some of my scoring to my own sentimental love and compassion for Jean. There is some emotion at play because I read other reviews of this that felt like it was kind of a facile look at a complicated topic, which I appreciate, but I think this movie tugged at me and got me over any sort of technical stuff. I just want to caveat my rating and say that maybe I am wrong and maybe I love this the same way I love the movie Elizabethtown, where it's like, it's not good, but I love it. So, I don't know. It's okay to like a thing.
It's okay to like a thing. I want to add, 5.8 is still an acceptable score. Bad is something that we give a 2 or a 3 to. We're anti-grade inflation here. We've only ever given 2 10s. Maybe out of over 50 movies that we've done, I think only about 4 or 5 have scored above a 9. And that should be something that you only give out a few times a year or so. Anyway, a score of 5 or 6 on average means it's a perfectly acceptable way to spend an evening. So, Seberg, your combined score comes to 6.6. You did not earn second opinion, and that's still, like, quite a bit better than the movie with the CGI chimp from last week. I was just listening to that and laughing at all of the many different ways that you found to say, why a chimp?
Wish I knew. I mean, as I said, like, I get the central conceit. I am not, it told me why, but why? Like, why? Why?
So, other stuff that you should watch instead. I loved the You Must Remember This season on Jean Seberg and Jane Fonda. That's a podcast by Karina Longworth. It's terrific. Watch Breathless. For another Breathless alum, I would recommend Stavisky with Belmondo, which is technically a biopic, and we will get to it at some point on here, and I'll be very excited when we do.
Can I mention my favorite fact about Stavisky?
Yes.
Stephen Sondheim wrote the music.
I knew that, and Yves Saint Laurent did the costumes.
Oh, I can't wait to watch this, because that's going to be a stylish movie.
We have like 2 months of slots that we haven't cluttered up, so maybe I'll try to get that in this summer or this fall. And then also circling back to Captain America, from the Lawyers, Guns, and Money blog by the late Stephen Attewell, his piece on Captain America is a New Deal Democrat, which we will be linking to in the show notes.
I would just also add, I've recommended Days of Rage before. I will recommend it again. So there's 2 Jean Seberg biographies. One is called Played Out. I don't really care for that one. I feel like it's, from the jump, inherently kind of misogynistic just from the title itself and onward. There is another one that I like a bit better that is called Jean Seberg Breathless by Gary McGee. I echo your recommendation of Karina Longworth's podcast. You Must Remember This, particularly this series. To get more color on the other subject of that, Jane Fonda has a wonderful documentary on her on HBO called Jane Fonda in 5 Acts. That gets into the messiness of the time. And also just shout out to Jean Seberg wherever she may be at this time. I hope her spirit is resting comfortably and she is at peace.
Whatever happened to her kid? I felt so bad for him.
I am happy to report that Alexandra Diego Gary, her son, is still with us.
Oh, good.
Yep. He is in a documentary called Eternelle Jean Seberg about her life. And it seems like he's a private citizen, but he is still with us. And he's not surprisingly very good looking elder statesman of France. So,
oh, good.
Yes.
Good. It sounds like he didn't wind up being a drug addict or a crazy person. Good.
It seems like he is a normal person living in the world.
Good.
So
good.
That's we like it.
Yeah. So now we have a section called Retractions, Apologies, and Listener Mailbag.
Before we go, we have to apologize for something we said in a previous episode that turned out to be misinformation, and we are sorry for this.
We were wrong. Sometimes we're wrong.
Rena, what were we wrong about?
Sarah, as I was listening to last week's episode on Better Man, the movie in which the British pop star Robbie Williams is played by a CGI chimpanzee, I found myself becoming worried that you and Alex, who substituted for me last week, and thanks again to her for covering while I was away, I became worried that you and Alex might not understand the line between what is an ape and what is a monkey.
That's fair. I would say that it wasn't necessarily not knowing. It was sort of me using them interchangeably because I was spectacularly confused by the motion picture I was watching. But would you like to explain the differences?
I noticed that both of you were using ape and monkey interchangeably. It can be argued that an ape is a monkey, but that monkeys are not apes.
Okay.
If you look at primates, within the whole tree, monkeys are a broader group, but apes are closer to humans, evolutionarily speaking, and split off from monkeys recently. There's a huge cluster of different kinds of monkeys, including like squirrel monkeys, but what we refer to as apes are chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas, and gibbons, with the bonobo being an offshoot of the chimpanzees that is like a finer boned one. So while apes can be called monkeys, monkeys are not apes. There's many millions of years in divergences in the tree, and apes are closer to humans. And I just wanted to clarify this.
Thank you.
Because I remember that from freshman year Anthro-Bio, where I learned, for example, that chimpanzees hunt and eat red colobus monkeys, their fellow primate.
Interesting. I did not know that. I don't think I cracked a biology book after sophomore year of high school because I was busy writing more than one paper on Taxi Driver. So
I am sure that if I got Tuesday Weld confused with Sue Lyon, you could come at me.
I could come at you. I will tell you that Sue Lyon was not the first choice for Lolita. Tuesday Weld was. So,
of course.
Good trivia to have in your back pocket. She turned down that role. The roles that Tuesday Weld turned down are fascinating. She turned down Bonnie Parker.
What?
Yeah. She turned down Lolita. I'm trying to think what else. Like, it's crazy. The list of roles that she almost had or could have had is bananas.
Yeah.
I adore her. I just went to see her in a restoration of Play It As It Lays, the movie. She's so wonderful in it. Anyway, that's not the point of this conversation. So thank you for clarifying the difference between primates, because I did use them interchangeably in that episode. I will also add, our podcast baby has matured and we have launched a Patreon in effort to defray some of the costs associated with bringing our show to you: platform hosting costs, recording costs, and research costs. And when it comes to research, I want to be clear that there's one person who actually does the work, and it's the person who just explained the difference between various primates. It is not me. And she has to occasionally order a book off the internet. We also sometimes have to pay for movie rentals. There's more to come for our Patreoners, but we are offering shout outs to anyone who chips in for us. And with that, we'd love to thank Gates, who signed up already. If you like the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And tell a friend, or better yet, plural friends, and share us on social media. We hear it helps. You can follow us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, where we have visual aids from our episodes. Our Instagram handle is @BioPickAPodcastStory, so do check us out there, and we'll link to that in the show notes as well. Please also check out our webpage at biopickapodcaststory.podbean.com to see the official episode ratings for all of the movies that we've done so far. And if you would like to get in touch, you can email us at biopiclistenermailbag@gmail.com.
Tune in next week when we'll be talking about the Korean movie The President's Last Bang with guest star Ryan Estrada, who is an Eisner Award-nominated cartoonist. It's our first film from Asia, and it looks weird in a good way from what I've seen of it already.
Yes, very excited to talk about this one.
Yes, and to get out of the West.
We spend a lot of time there.
We sure do. We spend a lot of time stuck in the 60s. We spend a lot of time with pop stars of the past half century. And with that, that is our show for the week. Good night to the earnest and the cynical.
Good night, and good night, Rena. I'm so glad to have you back.